So again, we are talking about wildfires today, and I am bringing in KTVU's Tom Vakar. He's been out there all day following this fire, and we've been following it here on News Now from Fox. Tom, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on there right now? What's the very latest?
Well, the very latest is this has been going on for almost a week now, and the fire is about as stubborn a fire as we've encountered in a long, long time. And where it's hitting is upper, primarily now. It was over in Sonoma County, and there's still a lot of fire over in Sonoma County, a famous wine growing area. But this is Napa County, the most famous wine growing area, and this is the northern part of Napa Valley, which includes the fairly famous towns of certainly St. Helena, Calistoga, where we are right now, which you can see as a ghost town because it's been evacuated. Places like Angwin, which is up in the mountains, which is a lovely little bedroom community of 3,400 people. And this is a town of 3,600 people, Calistoga, which is famous for its hot spas and because it's near geysers and very close to the mantle of the earth, and that's why they have hot springs all over the place here. All these places are basically evacuated right now. St. Helena is not yet evacuated, but it's a little farther down. Where we are is the very top of the Napa Valley, and to my left would be Mount St. Helena, which is a huge mountain that goes over into another county. It's on fire. Straight ahead of me are another set of mountains that are 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet tall, and at about 1,500 feet the little town of Angwin is sitting there and with a huge roaring fire just about 2 miles away. It's been attacked this time from above. In the last couple of days it was attacked from below as the fire burned up the hill and went through a place called Deer Valley and wiped it out, and was on its way up to Angwin, but they were able to stop it before it got to Angwin. The other problem here is that this fire that's coming down is much larger, and it's now in a situation where we have what is called a red flag warning, which is earmarked by hot temperatures, low humidity, and most importantly significantly higher winds than usual. As this thing blows around, it creates a blowtorch effect, and what we're trying to do right now is to see how much closer it's going to get to Angwin, and if it gets to Angwin, then it's probably going to have a pretty easy time burning it down. I hate to say, but I've been to enough of these places burned down to know that that's the real threat to Angwin right now. It's evacuated, but people are on edge about what's going to happen to their homes, or if they'll even have one to come back to.
Yeah, Tom, we know that those winds are an issue right now, but are there any other conditions that these firefighters are coming up against?
Oh, well, there's every condition you can imagine. You know, when you got hot weather like that, they're wearing this turnout gear plus all their backpacks and all of that stuff, and you know, it's hot. And it's draining on them, and many of these guys have been on fires for the last 2 or 3 months with very few breaks in between. In fact, I talked to one guy today who runs a tanker truck. He says in the last 2 months he's only been home 3 days, and he lives about 150 miles south of here, so he's been living out of his truck for the last few months while he's been supplying water to fire trucks and to other people who need water that are fighting the fire. So that is one thing, the whole fatigue issue. On top of that, this is extraordinarily difficult terrain, and because it's extraordinarily difficult terrain, tripping and falling is not at all unheard of. And then on top of that, these are the wilds, so you know, there are snakes and all those other things that are going on up in the mountains, and all of this stuff is something to be considered. But the real reality of the situation is that you have a fast-moving fire, and when you have a fast-moving fire, that is very dangerous for firefighters who might get caught in the middle of it, and that's happened in the past, and we've seen some great tragedies, and they're trying to avoid that from happening now, as they do all the time.
Now, you said that you covered quite a few fires in your time, Tom. Do you see any end in the near future?
Well, you can see an end to these things when they start talking about 35% containment. We talk about how much is this fire contained. When you get to about 35%, experts tell me that that's when they feel like now they've got enough of the fire at bay where they can take the crews that were on that 35% and move them to the other 65% and do a much better job of that. Well, this fire is only 5% contained. It was 2% yesterday, it's 5% contained, so it's 95% uncontained and out of control. So this is going to be a long fight, and the only thing that these winds are going to do in the next 24 to 48 hours is make it more difficult. It's going to put you in a situation where overnight, if you have high overnight winds, instead of being able to go in there when the winds normally die down and temp down a lot of this stuff, you're going to have to be sitting there watching this stuff burn, because you don't dare go in there in the dark unless you really are very sure of where you are, and then that's only really to defend life and property rather than to just try to put the fire out. And the other problem, which is a huge problem, now that you mention it, is the fact that there's so much smoke out here that a lot of the aircraft simply cannot be brought in to attack the fire. So, for example, today we were up in England, as I told you, and there were some helicopters that were weaving in and out of smoke columns, dropping their loads. But if you try to get a big jet in there or a real big propeller airplane down in that kind of smoke, that's extremely dangerous, and we did not see one aircraft in that particular area. There are plenty of aircraft flying today in various other areas, but when you get in really thick smoke, aircraft are, generally speaking, propeller aircraft, jet aircraft, not helicopters, are generally speaking not useful.
Yeah, Tom, thank you so much for everything out there. You can actually see the smoke behind you, so be safe out there. We've got coronavirus and we've got fires in California. Very unfortunate. But thank you for bringing us all those updates. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Alrighty, so again, that was Tom Vakar. He is with KTVU. So appreciative of him bringing us that update. So we're going to actually switch gears a little bit now. We are going to head to that interview that we were telling you about with our own Pilar Arias. She's coming out of Orlando. She's talking about how funding for the coronavirus is kind of not there.